10 Facts About U.S. President Nuclear Launch Codes. The nuclear launch codes and the procedures surrounding them are among the most closely guarded secrets in the United States. While many details remain classified, some information has been disclosed over time through official channels, investigative journalism, and declassified documents. Welcome to One Good Fact. Today, we are delving into 10 facts about U.S. presidents and the nuclear launch codes. Let's dive in. Fact number 1. The nuclear football is always nearby. Have you ever wondered what that mysterious black briefcase is that follows the U.S. president everywhere? It's not just a fancy suitcase. It's one of the most powerful tools on Earth. Presidents and vice presidents are routinely accompanied by a military officer carrying the football, which includes information and technology needed for the worst-case situation, when the president or his successor decides to order military action in response to a nuclear or possibly conventional attack on the United States or its allies. A military aide carrying the football has been in presidential entourages since the late 1950s and with vice presidents since the late 1970s. This briefcase, known as the nuclear football, contains everything the president needs to authorize a nuclear strike. Inside, there's a menu of retaliatory options, secure communication devices, and authentication codes. A military aide carries it at all times, even when the president is traveling abroad or vacationing. Why? Because in the event of an emergency, every second counts. Initially referred to as the satchel or the emergency actions pouch, it also has been called the black bag, the black box, and by 1963, it became known as the football. The nuclear football has been part of presidential protocol since John F. Kennedy's time, after the Cuban Missile Crisis showed how quickly tensions could escalate. Imagine this: if a nuclear attack were detected, the president would have mere minutes to decide whether to retaliate. That's why the football exists, to give the commander-in-chief immediate access to the tools needed to respond. Here's where it gets wild. The football isn't just one briefcase. There are actually several identical versions, each kept ready by different teams, so no matter where the president goes, the football is never far behind. And don't think it's light. This thing weighs about 45 pounds. So next time you see the president walking somewhere with a suited official trailing them, remember, they're carrying the weight of the world, literally. But here's the kicker. What happens if the president forgets their codes? Stick around because we'll dive into some jaw-dropping moments when things didn't go as planned. Fact number 2. The codes are not actually a single code. You've probably heard about the nuclear launch codes before, but did you know they aren't really a single code? Let me explain why these codes are way more complicated than you might think. When people talk about nuclear launch codes, they're referring to a whole system of authentication mechanisms. These include alphanumeric sequences, cryptographic keys, and other identifiers that prove the person ordering a strike is truly the president. Think of it like logging into your bank account, but instead of entering a password, you're verifying your identity through multiple layers of security. Why is this necessary? Well, imagine someone impersonating the president during a crisis. To prevent unauthorized launches, the military uses strict protocols to confirm orders. For example, the president must first authenticate themselves using a special card called the biscuit. Only then can they proceed with issuing commands. And get this, the actual codes themselves are stored in various locations, including inside the nuclear football. But here's the twist: the president doesn't memorize these codes. They rely on documents provided to them. This layered approach ensures that no rogue actor or accidental mistake can trigger Armageddon. The fact that one person, the U.S. president, has had the singular authority to make life or death nuclear use decisions has led to debates and proposals to address the dangers inherent in this arrangement, including by involving other responsible officials in nuclear use decisions in order to prevent a rushed process, and by Congress asserting its war powers more robustly. Let's find out. Fact number 3. The president has sole authority. What if I told you that one person, the U.S. president, has the power to launch nuclear weapons without anyone else's approval? Sounds crazy, right? But it's true. Under current policy, the president alone holds the authority to order a nuclear strike. No one, not Congress, not the vice president, not even top military officials, can stop or veto that decision once it's made. This unilateral power was established during the Cold War to ensure quick responses to potential threats from adversaries like the Soviet Union. Think about it. Back then, the fear was that any delay in responding to a nuclear attack could mean total destruction. So giving the president sole authority seemed like the safest bet. However, critics argue that this system puts too much power in one person's hands, especially given modern geopolitical complexities. To make matters scarier, the decision-making process happens incredibly fast. In some scenarios, the president may only have minutes to decide whether to retaliate. And while advisors can offer input, the final call rests entirely with them. This raises big questions about accountability and whether safeguards should be added. Speaking of mistakes, buckle up for our next fact, because you won't believe what happened when Jimmy Carter accidentally left his codes at the dry cleaners. Fact number 4. The codes were once lost or misplaced. What do you do when you lose your keys or phone? Panic, right? Now imagine losing something way more important, like the nuclear launch codes. Believe it or not, this actually happened. In one of the most bizarre security lapses in U.S. history, President Jimmy Carter accidentally sent his nuclear launch codes to the dry cleaners. Yes, you heard that right. While getting his suit cleaned, he unknowingly included the card containing the critical authentication codes. Thankfully, the codes were recovered before anything went wrong, but it's still shocking to think about how close we came to a major disaster. This incident highlights just how human the process of managing nuclear weapons can be. Despite all the high-tech systems in place, people make mistakes, and while safeguards exist to prevent unauthorized use, having such sensitive information floating around, even briefly, is terrifying. Here's the thing, the president relies on physical documents for authentication, which means there's always a risk of loss or misplacement. After this scare, procedures were tightened to ensure nothing like this could happen again. But it makes you wonder, what other slip-ups might have occurred that we don't know about? Speaking of presidents and their codes, let's talk about another alarming moment involving Ronald Reagan. What happens when the leader of the free world forgets their own authentication info? Keep watching to find out. Fact number 5. Ronald Reagan forgot his authentication codes. Imagine being the leader of the free world and forgetting something as crucial as your nuclear launch codes. Sounds impossible, right? Well, it happened, and it involved none other than Ronald Reagan. In 1981, when President Ronald Reagan was shot, the card was separated from him during surgery and found later in a shoe, while the aide with the football was left behind at the Washington Hilton Hotel when Reagan was rushed to the hospital. After surviving the assassination attempt in 1981, Reagan suffered memory issues during his recovery. Among the things he temporarily forgot, the secret codes needed to authorize a nuclear strike. This revelation shocked the nation and raised serious concerns about the system's vulnerabilities. The biscuit, as it's called, is a small card carried by the president at all times. It contains alphanumeric codes required to verify their identity during a nuclear launch scenario. Without it, the president cannot initiate a strike. For Reagan, this meant relying heavily on aides to step in until his memory returned. This incident underscored the fragility of the system. If the president, the ultimate decision-maker, can't access the codes, who steps up? Fortunately, backup protocols ensured continuity, but it highlighted the need for redundancy in case of emergencies. Interestingly, Reagan wasn't the only president to face challenges with the codes. Over the years, there have been reports of misplaced cards, forgotten sequences, and even confusion over how the system works. These stories remind us that no matter how advanced our technology gets, humans remain the weakest link. But wait, there's more. Did you know that for decades, the U.S. military used fake codes for its nuclear missiles? Yep, you read that correctly. Let's dive into this jaw-dropping fact next. Fact number 6. Fake codes were used during the Cold War. Quick question. What's worse than losing the nuclear launch codes? Using fake ones. That's exactly what the U.S. military did for years, and it's as alarming as it sounds. During the 1960s and 1970s, the default launch code for America's Minuteman intercontinental ballistic missiles was 00000000. Yes, 8 zeros. Why? Because higher-ranking officials prioritized convenience over security, assuming the president would never order a launch without proper authorization anyway. At first glance, this seems absurdly reckless. But back then, the focus was on speed and simplicity rather than safeguarding against potential insider threats. Military leaders believed the sheer complexity of launching a nuclear weapon would deter unauthorized actions. Spoiler alert, hindsight shows they were dangerously wrong. Thankfully, this glaring flaw was eventually fixed, and stronger encryption methods were introduced. Still, the fact that such a gaping hole existed in our defenses for so long is a sobering reminder of how much trust we place in these systems and how easily they can fail. Now here's a thought. What if the president didn't need Congress's approval to start a nuclear war? Sounds unthinkable, right? Well, guess what? It's true. Stick around to learn why this loophole exists and why it's sparking heated debates today. Fact number 7. There is no legal requirement for congressional approval. Picture this. The U.S. president decides to launch a nuclear strike without consulting anyone. Not Congress, not the military brass, nobody. Could that really happen? Unfortunately, yes. Under current U.S. law, the president has the sole authority to order a nuclear attack without needing congressional approval. While Congress holds the constitutional power to declare war, there's no legal mechanism requiring them to sign off on a nuclear strike. This unilateral power stems from Cold War-era policies designed for rapid response. Back then, the fear was that waiting for legislative approval could cost valuable time in a crisis. But times have changed, and many argue this unchecked authority is outdated and dangerous. Critics say it leaves too much room for error or worse, abuse of power. Efforts to reform this system have gained traction recently, with lawmakers proposing bills to require consultation with Congress before a nuclear strike. However, change has been slow, leaving the door open for potentially catastrophic decisions made by a single individual. All right, now let's shift gears again. Did you know the president carries a tiny card everywhere they go that's essential for launching nukes? We'll break down the mysterious biscuit and why it's so critical in our next segment. Fact number 8. The biscuit plays a key role. What if I told you the president carries around a tiny card that could literally decide the fate of the world? Sounds like something out of a spy movie, right? Except it's real, and it's called the biscuit. The biscuit is a small plastic card carried by the U.S. president at all times. It contains alphanumeric codes that are essential for authenticating their identity during a nuclear launch scenario. Without this card, the president cannot authorize a strike, even if they wanted to. Here's why the biscuit is so critical. When the president orders a nuclear strike, they must first verify their identity using the codes on the card. These codes match encrypted sequences stored in military systems, ensuring the order comes from the legitimate commander-in-chief. Losing or forgetting the biscuit could delay or even prevent a response in a crisis. Interestingly, the biscuit itself doesn't contain launch instructions. It's purely an authentication tool, but its importance can't be overstated. Presidents are expected to memorize the codes on the card, though aides are always nearby to assist if needed. And yes, every new president gets their own freshly updated biscuit after taking office. President Bill Clinton once lost his biscuit. But here's the thing. What happens once the president gives the go-ahead? Believe it or not, there's another layer of protection designed to stop rogue launches. Stay tuned as we explore the two-person rule in the military chain of command. Fact number 9. A two-person rule exists in the military chain. You've probably heard the saying, 2 heads are better than 1. Well, when it comes to launching nuclear weapons, this philosophy isn't just advice, it's mandatory. Let me explain how the two-person rule keeps things in check. The two-person rule requires that at least 2 authorized individuals verify and approve any step in the nuclear launch process. This applies to everyone involved, from the president's aides confirming authentication codes to missile operators carrying out the final launch sequence. No single person can unilaterally execute a nuclear strike. This rule exists to prevent accidental or unauthorized launches. For example, missile silo crews work in pairs, requiring both members to turn keys simultaneously to activate a launch. The keys are positioned far enough apart that one person can't reach both. They'd need a partner to help. It's a failsafe designed to ensure no lone actor can trigger Armageddon. Even within the Pentagon, multiple officials must confirm the president's orders before they're transmitted to missile bases or submarines. While the president has sole authority to initiate the process, the two-person rule ensures accountability at every level. This system has been tested repeatedly over decades, proving its effectiveness time and again. Now let's zoom back in time to the early days of the Cold War. You won't believe how chaotic and downright reckless the original nuclear launch procedures were. Stick around as we uncover how these codes were simplified and sometimes ignored in the name of speed. Fact number 10. The codes have been simplified over time. Imagine trying to remember a 20-digit code while under pressure to save the world. Doesn't sound easy, does it? That's exactly why the US government decided to simplify nuclear launch codes, but the results weren't always reassuring. In the early years of the Cold War, nuclear launch codes were incredibly complex, involving lengthy sequences of numbers and letters. But as tensions escalated, military leaders realized that simplicity was key to ensuring quick decision-making. Over time, the codes became shorter and easier to manage, but sometimes at the cost of security. Take, for instance, the infamous 00000000 default code used for Minuteman missiles in the 1960s and 70s. This glaring oversight occurred because higher-ups valued ease of access over strict safeguards, assuming the president would never order a launch without proper authorization. Thankfully, stricter measures were eventually implemented, but not before exposing major vulnerabilities. Today, the codes are still designed to balance speed and security. They're short enough to be practical but robust enough to prevent unauthorized use. However, the evolution of these codes reflects a broader tension between efficiency and safety, a challenge that continues to shape nuclear policy today. And there you have it, 10 fascinating facts about the US president's nuclear launch codes. From misplaced briefcases to fake codes, it's clear that managing the most powerful weapons on Earth is no simple task. If you found these stories as mind-blowing as we did, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into history's biggest secrets.